So like I was saying, this vehicle has a few rust spots. It's got 3. It's got one on the other side, but it's just like this. You got one on the back quarter panel here and one on the door. This is pretty big, but it isn't rusted all the way through yet. And definitely not past the point of no return. I mean, I can deal with anything. Doesn't matter if it's rusted through. Oh, we do got it through right there. So we'll take care of it either way. Nip it in the ass and get rid of it and make sure it doesn't come back for years to come. So I'm going to take some duct tape here and just layer it over this bottom plastic part. I was able to, it's so rotted, I was able to yank it right out loose. And this is going to protect it. That's better. Now I can really work at this without hitting or knocking into this with any of my tools. So I've got a powerful little electric die grinder here I found on eBay a couple years ago, and then I've got an extension wand on it with a little rotary cutting disc. I'm going to try to use that. I'm going to hook this up to 240 volts too. This thing really goes at 240. It's either a 120, it can do both 120 or 240 volts because it's foreign. It's really meant for the Asian markets. I want to be past the rust completely into fresh, unrusted territory. So I'm going to keep cutting until I find good meat. I'm going to work my way up and out. As far as height, I think I'm good. We don't need to go any higher. So I'm past my rust, which I want to be. Now, if I didn't cut past my rust, or if I wasn't cutting my rusty metal out here, it would come through, and it would come through my bodywork fast, like within a year. Ask me how I know. Trust me, I know. I've tried doing this half-ass. You gotta cut every bit of rust out, and you have to kill the infection completely. It's a cancer, and it just spreads. Today, I'm gonna wire brush where we are connecting to this edge. I'm going to hit it with a rust reformer paint a little ways up, but the rest I'm going to do later underneath this lip. I'm going to come through here, I'm going to clean it all up, I'm going to grind all that rust off, get all that debris out of there, and paint the shit out of it. Put maybe some thick epoxy coating over it, something. But right now we are focusing on this, and I've got all the rust cut out that I want to get cut out. I'm going to take some sandpaper and a wire brush and get this burr, see this burr, off the edge of all this metal here, and clean all that. I put a little grinding stone in my Dremel wand here, and I'm just gonna get those burrs off and grind around the outside of everywhere I've cut on both sides. Okay, I've got compressed air. And a rag. And a rag and brake parts cleaner. So I'm going to blow it out really, really good with the compressed air all around this area, everywhere I was cutting. And then I'm going to clean it very good with the brake parts cleaner and the rag. You can use acetone too if you want, rubbing alcohol, whatever you got. This is hands down the most important part of this video. Before I do anything with this, I am going to paint all around the area that I cut, all the bare metal surfaces everywhere. and pass that, especially on the inside of the metal or on the inside of the fender. And what I have to do that is just an oil-based self-etching primer. Honestly, this is not the best thing to do it with. What you really want is like a Pour 15 epoxy primer. It is very, very expensive, but it's almost guaranteed that you will never get rust through it. Especially any epoxy primer, it's tougher and it's going to provide a really, really good base coat. I prefer oil base. I just use oil base because it's cheap and it'll work. It works in my applications, and for the length of the time I have the car, it's going to be fine. But yeah, Pour 15, POR15. Check. It's available at local parts stores, everything like that. I've also added some hardener to this and some Japan dryer, a couple secret ingredients. The catalyst hardener helps it to be a stronger base coat, and the Japan dryer helps it to dry out way faster, so I can put other stuff over top of it faster. And I'm going to make absolutely sure I get all of these raw edges. Anywhere there's cut metal, anything like that. And I'm going to get it all with a brush first, and then I'm going to spray it after with rust reformer and a rattle can. So I'm going to spray it a couple of times too, just as extra insurance, added security. Alright, so it's been a few hours. I went and got something to eat, replaced my oxygen sensor, and this is dry to the touch. So now I'm going to spray over it just to be on the safe side with rust reformer. It's cheap, it's by Rust-Oleum, and it will convert any rust to a protected paintable surface. Major dilemma here. I had this spot on the door that appeared to be just surface rust, and it wasn't all the way through in any areas, so I thought. So far I've hit it with the flap disc. First the flap disc, then the wire brush, then the wire brush on my drill that gets really down in those holes so I don't have to sandblast this. And I found a hole that appears to go all the way through. And what that means is that there is most definitely rust on the other side, the inside of this door. So even if I do thoroughly treat this area and I don't cut this out, I'll still get rust coming through in the future. Now it could be 5 years, it could be a year, could be a decade, maybe it never comes through, but there's definitely rust forming on the inside of that door. I would almost guarantee it. I think I'm just going to treat it and paint it. I'm not going to cut this out. I'm not going to be a hero. I'm not going to go the extra mile here. If I have to get a replacement door from, you know, the U-Pull-It junkyard around here in the future, I will. I might do it anyway and then just paint it. So for this specific repair, I am using a chunk of aluminum that I got from an old Subaru hood. Some Subarus came with aluminum hoods back in the day. This one came from a 2003 Subaru Forester, or 2004. And before we took it to the scrapyard, I cut a big chunk out of the hood just for body work, just in case I would ever need it. I'm gonna have to make a couple pieces here. So I'm going to take this piece of aluminum, I'm going to bend the bottom edge so it can go in here in this bottom part, and then I'm going to have to bend another piece and join or glue the two together. So I'm going to have a piece here with a bent bottom edge that goes behind this fender, and then another longer piece here with a bent bottom edge that goes behind this fender. And I'm not sure if I'm going to glue it or pop rivet it yet. I'm hesitant about pop riveting it because I'll have to drill holes through this, and I don't know if I can protect that raw steel in the holes.
13th, 1974.
It's not a perfect edge, but
Or if he
it'll
did,
work.
you would never know what parts were truth.
And it gives this a lot of integrity, this piece. Alright, I'm going to cut this out and this.
The family's attic.
If I can get
Strange noises would often be heard throughout the house over the years.
that down.
But nothing that felt.
So I've got a cheap pop rivet gun and just some aluminum rivets. I'm going to rivet this in because I don't think glue will be strong enough. And I need it held in a few places.
Interestingly, despite his
I've got all my rivets in, just 1, 2, 3, 4. And now just to be safe, I'm going to hit the entire thing with more rust reformer to protect it and let that dry, because I've scratched steel edges that were previously painted. So there's definitely some raw exposed steel in there. So I'm about to mix up some Bondo glass, and this is what I specifically prefer to use out of everything. Over the years I have tried everything else. I've tried fiberglass resin and and the matte. I don't like that. I've also tried regular body filler that is not the glass type, and I do not like that at all either. It's weak, it's not very flexible, it cracks and it separates sometimes, it falls apart. It's just, this is hands down the best stuff I have found is the Bondo glass filler or fiberglass filler that's already pre-mixed like this, and it has fiberglass fibers in the mixture already, and they're ground up instead of a big messy mat that you have to mess with. But this stuff is really good. It flexes after it dries, it adheres very well. And I'm just going to mix up a little bit. I'm going to fill this with the first coat and just try to level it, get it level, get something I can sand down there. Made this tray thing a few years ago by myself. I should have just bought one by now. Alright, I'm using regular Bondo cream hardener with this. It works perfectly fine. With glass filler, you don't need a special hardener. Just gonna put a little bit on there. Now the more you put on there, the faster it will dry. If you put too much on, it'll dry before you're even done mixing it. It's pretty cold in here, so hopefully I have some time. I have had times where it hasn't dried at all, and I think it was defective hardener, or I don't know what it was, probably expired products. And that's the worst. You gotta kind of curdle and peel it back off of, you know, your vehicle or whatever you're working on. But I mix it thoroughly well. Now this stuff is significantly more expensive, almost twice as much as the traditional non-fiberglass body filler, but it's just worth it. I've never had it fail me. And to clean it off my tools, I'm going to use acetone. It hasn't even been 5 minutes and it's already starting to set up, so that's a good feeling. Put a little over this rough spot that was rusty too. I wire wheeled that and rust treated it and put some rust reformer over it, painted it, and then skim coated it with this. Should be good enough. got my auto body sander here, and this is dry. It's not tacky at all, so I'm just gonna knock it down. I got some 60 grit on here. I'm gonna knock this down really quick and hit it with another layer. Second coat is dry. I let it sit overnight. Hopefully it's enough. It's barely going to be. If it is, I'm going to sand it down now, and I'm just using a block sander with 60 grit. So I've got it knocked down pretty well. I did a combination of this rougher grit, 60 I think it is, on the block. I did my power sander a little bit. You have to be careful if you use one of these, very, very careful. When I use one, I just use it to knock it down, and then I finish it with hand sanding. And I also use some 220 at the very end. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use regular Bondo. Actually, I might have putty to fill these holes here, just these small remaining holes. I'm not going to try to sand those out. I'm just going to fill them. And the toughest part is going to be this bottom edge here. So I'm going to take my multi-tool, cut this out, which it's, you know, the vibrating cutter thing. I'll show you. And I'm going to start to shape and form and sculpt that edge. I might add a little something here. See this low spot here? Or I might knock everything down to that level. I'm not sure. I am almost 100% happy with this bottom edge in a bit, but I ended up sticking my cutting wheel in there with the grinder going. It's very risky because the grinder is spinning at such high RPMs. You can make mistakes really fast, but it worked really good. I ended up ultimately using more glass instead of Bondo, and I just skim coated this because I was using fiberglass on the other side. Here's the other side. The other side had the same thing going on, but instead on this side, what I did was I used spray foam, and I filled the hole after priming it with the rust primer. And I filled the hole with spray foam, and then I flush cut it with my multi-tool. And now I'm putting fiberglass over that. I guess we'll see which repair lasts longer. I've never done the spray foam thing. But yeah, you can kind of see it under here. That light is terrible. And I guess we'll see what happens. So that third skin coat I put on there, I sanded it just now, sanded the hell out of it, hand sanded it too, so I could be more gentle and get a straight finish. I still got some divots, just some minor stuff like here and here that are going to show through the paint. Now there's a few ways of dealing with this. I could use regular Bondo, and I could use filler primer. It's in like a rattle can, and it's a primer that fills, and then I could sand that down. Or I can use my secret weapon here, which is glazing and spot putty. It's by Bondo, and basically it's a really smooth, like thin mix. It has a hardener with it too, just regular cream hardener. And I'm going to use that. I'm going to mix a tiny bit up and then just fill those imperfections with it, sand those out. It's really easy stuff to sand. So I got the glazing and spot putty all applied here. And the cool thing about this stuff is it doesn't take as long to dry, and it's easier to sand. So I can probably sand this out tonight with some fine grit sandpaper, you know, maybe on a block, and I'll be done with it. I don't care if there's any more imperfections, whatever. After that, I'm going to prime it and walk away from this spot. But altogether, 4 different layers of stuff, 4 different applications. Now, if you're really good, you can do it in 2, or if you don't give a shit, you can do it in 1 or 2. I've got that final coat of glazing and spot putty. I just sanded that first with 120 grit, and then I finished everything off with 220. It looks all right. We won't be able to tell until I get my primer on there, but it looks good enough to play ball for me. This is just going to be my daily driver. I'm never going to sell this. Here's the other side with the spray foam, the driver's side, where I filled it with the spray foam. All I did was I filled it with the spray foam, flush cut it with my multi-tool. Then I went over that with the fiberglass filler. You can see it, that's the green. And then I just did one more coat with regular Bondo, and it looks better than the other side in my opinion. I even got that line in there. The Bondo over the glass is the ultimate way to go in my opinion. The glass, I just don't trust Bondo through the whole thing. I don't trust Bondo as my base filler. But here it is after it's all sprayed. You really can't see that. I can't see, it hasn't flashed underneath the paint at all. It's hard without good light in here, but it looks pretty good all together. My paint job sucks. I got orange peel really bad in this fender and it kept running last night, but the body work doesn't look too bad. I didn't capture this, see this ridge here? I didn't capture that very well. I never really do when I do these. It's very difficult to capture that ridge, but if I wanted to be OCD about this, I could sand the paint, shoot it again, level off any imperfections. I could keep screwing with it until it was perfect, but it's honestly good enough for me. The other side with the spray foam is a different story. I could see the divot very clearly here where the spray foam is, and where I only put that one layer of Bondo or 2 layers on top of the spray foam. But I'm probably not going to screw with it, to be honest with you. I could skim coat this with that Bondo glazing putty that I have, and then sand it and keep screwing with it, but it's fine. It's good enough for me, for my daily driver. And you'd really have to look hard and be looking for it to notice it. Yeah, that's about it for this video. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you got something out of this. If you're only painting the spot you're repairing, I would highly recommend taping off. Like in this situation, I would just paint this whole quarter panel if I was just painting the area I was repairing. If you paint that area only specifically, it will flash even if you have your color matched. So definitely I would, if it was me, I would always, you know, try to paint the entire quarter panel. Maybe I would tape it off here and then, you know, paint this section here. It's difficult to not have it stick out, but you can also try and paint your area that you repaired. Your paint code is always on the inside of the door. Typically it'll be on the driver's side over there. I can't open that right now, but it'll be somewhere in here. And usually on every vehicle you can read your paint code. You can go to the parts store and you can order your specific paint, or tell them, ask them if they have the paint to match your code. You can also find it online on eBay. I just did a Jeep and that paint code was Chrysler Alpine White, or Fiat Alpine White, I think. I ordered it off eBay. Anyway, hope this helps. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, let me know in the doobly-doo. Thank you for tuning in. I will be uploading more. The car doesn't look too bad. It looks a hell of a lot better than it did. And as always, you stay frosty. Don't do anything Jesus wouldn't do, and I will see you on the next one.